I'm Dr. John Merchler, and in this presentation, I want to give an overview of sports science. So what is sports science? If we look in different job postings or we look in the literature, we see all these different types of titles that are used that are connected somehow to sports science. Sports scientist, sport analytics, sport performance, sport nutritionist, sports psychologist, sports medicine, sport coach, sport management, sport business, I don't have that on here. Strength and conditioning coach, athletic training, physical therapy, orthopedics, fitness professionals, MDs, DOs, PTs, what have you. There's all these different areas, and somehow they're linked to sport science. And in this presentation, I want to try to give a big picture perspective of what this sports science term means. So if I just look up in the literature, some different definitions, there's not one consistent definition, but they all tend to have this type of theme. It's a field in which multiple scientific disciplines are studied and applied concurrently to understand and improve sport performance. Or another way of thinking about that is the sports science is the application of science to understand sport. And that can come from a training perspective, a rehabilitation perspective, maybe tactics or strategies, techniques, movement skills, learning, or performance itself. So it's still a little bit vague, but in essence, we're talking about science applied to sport. And when I talk with people about sports science and application of sports science, I really put things into one of two lenses. I look at it through two ways, two perspectives. First, a lot of times people use sports science to mean, how can we help athletes right now? How can we apply our sports science knowledge that we have at this point in time to help a team, to help an individual, to help community members, what have you. The other perspective, the other lens I look at from a sports science, when I hear the term sports science used, is what new sports science knowledge will we generate? And the difference between these two bullets is really the time that we're looking at in terms of applying information. And the first bullet, right now is the time. How do we help? How do we help an athlete? How do we help a coach? How do we help prevent an injury? How do we help rehabilitate an injury? How do we help with wins and losses of a team or an individual? Whereas the generating knowledge happens over a long period of time. And in that context, I'm usually talking about research studies that are planned and carried out in a very rigorous step-by-step procedure. And that takes time. You know, a study we recently published this past year, we collected data 6 years ago. 6 years ago, and publishing now, the data, the results are not helpful to whoever participated in the study 6 years ago because they're long gone from whatever sport we were looking at. And so, but generating knowledge in the terms of peer-reviewed primary source information takes a long time. Whereas sports science, often we're looking at how do we help at this moment in time. So just a little bit more on that. How can we apply our sports science knowledge right now to prevent an injury, to rehabilitate from an injury, to learn a skill, to be stronger, to improve our fitness? These are questions that often coaches, athletes, practitioners, community members, they go to a sports scientist and they want that information to help right now. And what new sports science knowledge will we generate? Well, that's where we're starting to look at, well, what are the mechanisms of injuries? What are the risk factors for having a chronic injury or an acute injury? What are the evidence-based practices that help develop an effective rehabilitation program or an exercise prescription program? What information do we need to know about movement patterns or forces generated that will influence equipment design and then ultimately training loads, which is related to exercise prescription? So even though these two things share in common an interest in sports science, it's really a different perspective that sports science is being used. And what's also interesting is the people working in each of these areas are not necessarily the same people. All right. On the left side here, how do we help right now? We're looking at people who are working with teams, collegiate, professional, what have you, and they're trying to collect information about the athletes and trying to help them immediately. Whereas our faculty, our students in master's program, PhD programs, they're looking to generate knowledge over a long period of time, collecting data now and hopefully publishing 6 years later. So it's a long-term process, and the people who are doing the research are not necessarily the people who work best with coaches, athletes, practitioners, and vice versa. And that's why what you'll see in this presentation is I'll really emphasize sports science can only be achieved through interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, multi-perspective views in terms of performance. So who is being helped? I've mentioned athletes, coaches, practitioners. Well, it could be a professional athlete, and that's certainly important. And a lot of the professional teams, whatever professional league you're looking at, they are likely hiring and employ some type of sports science personnel, whether it's a single person or a team of people. Could be a collegiate athlete. And a lot of colleges are building out sports science programs to help their college athletes of all different sports. Could be a high school athlete. A little less likely that a high school is hiring a sports scientist, but maybe there's some type of connection between a sport industry and high school athletics. Or it could be youth sports, and youth sports are, age group sports where maybe a high school doesn't have a certain club or what have you, and athletes students can participate in league sports. It could also be something like runners or triathletes. I mentioned them because that's my other area that I love. We like our endurance athletes, and maybe it's endurance athletes, or maybe it's strength and conditioning athletes. Maybe it's cross training specialist, or different types of obstacle courses, or what have you. There's a wide variety of sports out there that are not limited to just our major professional sports, what we see on TV. It could be coaches that we're trying to help coaches, and often the way that it would work, because the researcher is not necessarily a coach, the researcher gives information to the coach, and the coach then determines how to communicate and what information to communicate back to the athlete. Strength and conditioning specialists are a very important part of a sports science team. And then there's even this angle of sport business, sport management, agents, the business, the sport economy side of things. Because in essence, you need an economy to be able to pay people to do sports science work. And so there is a wide range of people connected to sports science. And it's not even just our classic biomechanists, exercise physiologists, sports psychologists, what have you. There's a wide range of areas that are connected to sports science, and a wide range of people that we're trying to help. And I should also emphasize, that the high-level athlete is important, and they are often looking for marginal gains, or those small little increments of improvement that could lead to a win or change in podium spot or what have you. But a lot of times we may be faced with, and more likely faced with, the mere mortal, the athlete who is trying to complete a marathon versus win a marathon. The age grouper who's trying to improve their triathlon performance, or maybe qualify for a world championship, or maybe make an age group podium. And so I refer to these people, and I put myself in this bin, as mere mortals. And we want to help people who are trying to strive and achieve their own personal goals, and provide the pertinent sports science information that allows them to do that. So when we look at athletes, I'm using this schematic from Reimer and colleagues, published in 2024. It's good to sort of compartmentalize athletes or competitors in just any sport, ping pong, badminton, what have you. Swimmers, track, name your sport. You can put athletes into these bins. And the reason why I tend to do that, and I gravitate towards a model like this, is I can then start compartmentalizing the advice I give back to this group of athletes, ultimately dialing down the specific information to an individual. So the way this model is broken out is on the y-axis, we have health status. This would be healthy. This would be unhealthy. And then we have performance status, high performing, low performing. And again, whatever the performance is, it could be wins, losses, it could be 5K time, it could be how the performance was on a particular skill, right? So these are not defined activities, but in a mindset of saying, here's someone who's high performing on this axis all the way over here. Here's someone who's low performing. Here's someone who's healthy. And again, health could be anything from physical to mental, what have you, financial, stress-wise, what have you. And this would be someone who's unhealthy. And so really we have these 4 bins. We have the healthy high performer, and ideally that's where we want our athletes to strive and live in, is you're healthy physically, mentally, you're performing, you're hitting your goals, you're hitting your metrics, whatever it is, and everything's just sort of rolling along. But you do have people who are healthy, but they are underperforming in whatever capacity. Mindset's good, physically they're well, health-wise they're well, but for whatever reason, they're not able to get that match point. They're not able to finish that race first. They're not able to achieve whatever personal goal they set out to. So it's an underperformance. Then we have unhealthy people who are also underperforming. So something's wrong in life, you're injured, what have you, maybe mentally stressed out, what have you, and you're not performing well as well. And then you have an unhealthy person who may still be a high performer. And these people often are masked in terms of how to help them because their 5K time is right on point. They're winning their matches. They're scoring that last goal in overtime, whatever it is. They're high performing, but they may be unhealthy. And again, unhealthy, broad spectrum of what that means, from mental health to physical health and what have you. So really by putting people in these different bins, then we can start trying to gauge what type of advice to ultimately move athletes up to this top right quadrant. In order to do that, we need a wide range of expertise helping an athlete. And in this model, also from Reimer, all these different areas identified: data scientists, education, applied epidemiology, biomechanics, research and innovation, brain health, what have you, inner circle, a little bit more discipline related, sports medicine, coaching, strength and conditioning, mental health, sports science, sports nutrition, whatever it is, and the athletes in here, and there's even more domains, even closer to the athlete in terms of what's going on with affecting the athlete's health status and affecting the athlete's ability to perform. And so we need all these different areas. There's no way that each of us can be an expert in all these areas. And so what we need to learn is not only a focus in one particular area, but we need to learn how to bring these other areas together in a way to, in a coordinated way, to help an athlete ultimately move to high performer, healthy athlete. Again, performance can be anything. It doesn't need to be world records. It doesn't need to be personal records even. Performance can have a lot of different meanings. And so we talk about interdisciplinary, where we're working together, and multidisciplinary, where we're working independent of each other, but then ultimately bringing messages together. So interdisciplinary, a biomechanist and brain health person are working on a project and on an athlete, something like that. Multidisciplinary, we're all working individually, but then we share information about the athlete, and then that's aggregated at that point. All right, but the point being that we need to have all these areas, and we need to be respectful of the different areas, because there may be an area that we just don't think about. Again, here, there's not sport business on here. The business side of some athletes is important, contract management, costs, what have you. There's a business side to, especially professional sports, but even some age group sports, managing different sponsors or what have you can come into a stressor placed on the person. And so even in this model, we don't have sport business, but it's there. And so this is not an exclusive list of all the different areas that would help an athlete. But whenever I talk about interdisciplinary type work, I always bring up this model, or this parable of, in this case, it's 6 blind scientists. And there's other parables. The parable is also 6 blind teachers, or blindfolded scientists, or blind science, whichever it is. But they're different parables, but they all have the same sort of story that goes along with it. And the story is something like this. We have 6 scientists that are blindfolded. They're outside a room, and they're told to go inside this room and identify, blindfolded, whatever object is in that room. So one scientist goes in the room blindfolded and grabs a part of the object and says, oh, it's a spear. Another scientist goes in the room, grabs a part of the object and says, no, it's a rope. Another one says it's a fan, it's a wall, it's a tree, whatever it is. It's, different parables have different examples. But each of them are right, but each of them are wrong. And because they're only looking at one perspective of the object. And it's not until they remove the blindfolds, or it's not until they start sharing information with each other, that they could ultimately say, oh, this is an elephant. It's not a spear. It's not a snake. It's not a rope. It's an elephant. And so, excuse me, that's what interdisciplinary is about, is working with each other, and multidisciplinary, working with each other and sharing information in such a way that you can better understand the solution to whatever the question is. In this case, what's the object in the room? Now, I also talk about interdisciplinary by specifically doing a lecture on kinesiology. Let me get everything flying up here. You're in the Department of Kinesiology and Nutrition Sciences, and there's all these different classes that you have to take, from sports psychology or motor control, motor learning, exercise physiology, sport, whatever it is, whatever the course title is, functional anatomy. And somehow all those courses are important to the department because we have you take those classes. Well, ultimately, what I like to do is I can try to convince everyone in the department that we're all interested in performance. I've used this term several times now. I haven't defined it. I can define it now as something as defined as how well we do something, how well we run a 5K, how well we run a marathon, how high we jump, how accurate we throw a ball, how well we catch things. Like how well we do something is performance. And then it's graded, okay? It's ranked. Oh, high performer, low performer, whatever it is. Well, if we're all interested in performance, how well we do something as a human, well, now we just got to back up and say, well, what makes a performance? Well, performance is nothing more than a bunch of movements. I've got a separate lecture on this, so I won't go into the detail on this. But performance is nothing more than a bunch of movements, flexion, extension, internal, external rotations, what have you. Movements are nothing more than displacement in some time period, or change in position in a time period. How do the movements happen? Well, there's some type of force or push or pull that tends to cause movement. And those forces are either external to the person or internal. They come from muscles. Yes, ligaments, tendons, things like that. But I'll just be lazy and say muscles. They generate forces. How do muscles know what to do? Well, the brain, the central nervous system, the nervous system in general, tell the muscles what to do. The muscles generate forces. That causes a displacement at some time of a segment. That's a movement. We put a name on the movement, flexion, extension, what have you. We put those movements together, and we have a performance. Running, jumping, skipping, hopping, whatever it is. And the central nervous system is also influenced by things outside the body. It could be psychological pressure. Throwing free throws at halftime at, in front of 10,000, 20,000 people. That's a lot of psychological pressure on someone. Brain may send the wrong signal to the wrong muscle to fire at the wrong time, generates the wrong force applied in the wrong direction or the wrong moment in time, causes the wrong displacement in time, causes the wrong movement, and ultimately causes an error in performance. And the environment can be anything outside the body: air, temperature, humidity, wind, altitude, sunlight, whatever it is. And it can also be psychological pressure and visual cues as well. And I've got these elements over here that all describe some more of the details of each of these areas. And then on this left side are all the different domains that we teach within our department, ultimately recognizing that each of these areas is very important to a performance. If I generate the wrong force, I'm going to have the wrong performance. If I send the wrong motor signal, I'm going to have the wrong performance. So all these things go together. And even though things like nutrition don't show up in the model specifically, it's there because in order for muscles to generate force, we've got to have chemical energy in our body. We need to have the right nutrition in our body in order ultimately to generate a muscle force. And so this department and your degree is interdisciplinary in nature. And what's important is, as we are trying to really gravitate towards one area, maybe you want to be the world's best biomechanist or exercise physiologist or best nutritionist, whatever it is, you're only going to get there and you're only going to be able to help performance is if you recognize the importance of the other people in the room, the other blindfolded scientists, and be able to pull everyone together and then ultimately give a message to the athlete to help his or her performance. I also use this model to sort of give that sense that I never want to be the world's best biomechanist, because if I am, I only know one small part of human performance. I never want to be the world's best exercise physiologist because I only know one small part of human performance. All right. But we need to keep broadening ourselves. Now, in your degree, you often end up, especially as you go on for master's or PhD, if you're in that program, either of those programs now, you're starting to streamline your interest and get focused in on a particular area. That's great. But once you get your PhD, once you get your master's and you've streamlined, well, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to branch back out. So you develop some expertise in a particular area, but ultimately to achieve whatever goal you want, if it's human performance related, you've got to pull from different areas. And so this is just a model to sort of give a big picture perspective of human performance, is that we need chemical energy in the body. Energy is the capacity to do work. Work is applying a force over some distance. So I need chemical energy, just like our cars have gas engines or battery engines or whatever it is. That's potential energy. Potential chemical energy. We transform that chemical energy to mechanical energy. That's energy of movement, or applying a force over some distance, or applying a force over some velocity, what have you. We transform that energy using two metabolic pathways, aerobic and anaerobic. This is in the human body. And we need to understand all the different aspects of the chemical energy, fats, carbohydrates, proteins. We got to understand how to get them in the body, how to store them, how to replenish them, how to fuel during an event, if that's the case, what have you. We also need to understand these pathways of taking that potential chemical energy and train those pathways in a way that generate a lot of mechanical energy. This transformation from this form of energy to mechanical energy is never perfect. It's never one for one. In fact, if we have 100 units of chemical energy over here, we probably will only get about 25 units of mechanical energy over here. In another lecture, I go through transformation of energy. We can never destroy nor create energy. We can only transform energy from different forms, chemical to mechanical or nuclear, water, hydration, solar, what have you. Those are all different forms of energy. Heat is a form of energy. And when we only transform about 75 or 25% of the energy to mechanical energy, the other energy goes somewhere else. It goes to heat mostly, especially in the human body. And that's why we get warmed up as we start exercising, is we're generating a lot of heat. Sometimes we want to learn how to retain that heat. Sometimes we want to get rid of that heat. But this process of generating a force and applying the force in the right direction, right magnitude, right time, starts with potential chemical energy. And so we need this broad spectrum of physiology, mechanics, nutrition, what have you, to ultimately understand human performance. And sports science in general is a term that has been more frequently used over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years. And this has really become a hot topic in terms of exercise science. And it's really just applying science to sport. And sport can be all different things. And it's not just competitive sports, it can be exercise as well. And locally, our sport and professional sport area has just exploded. You know, UFC, WNBA Aces, Golden Knights, Raiders, Las Vegas Lights, soccer. I don't have Desert Dogs on here. We got the Eaters, we got F1. And we've always had elite athletes in the form of circus performers and Cirque du Soleil artists. And so we have all these high performing professional athletes competing, and they hire sports scientists. And so this idea of sports science has really expanded quite quickly in the area. And yeah, these are our Desert Dogs folks right here. So I don't have the logo. That's terrible. I'll fix that. Okay, so sports science. And what you'll see in this course, and what is really important to emphasize with this phrase, sports science, is the science aspect. And so in this course, we'll go through science approach, research approach. And what some of the hot topics with science, and the reason why sports science has really sort of taken off, is that instruments have become more portable and more accessible cost-wise to more people. Back when I did my PhD work in the mid-90s, we would collect kinematic data and it would take us weeks to process. Now we collect kinematic data and we get results within seconds. Same thing with force data or what have you, or muscle activity. And what it does, at the end, all the equipment's become more portable. It's become miniaturized, battery operated. It transmits to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And we're able to collect information without even putting sensors on people, which has really changed the landscape with our understanding of movements. And it allows us to do really strange movements like trampoline exercises. Well, sprinting's not strange, but sprinting with some special timing gates is important. We're able to measure core temperature by swallowing a pill. We could do muscle activity using wireless sensors and do lots of different measurements of force using portable technology. And so there's lots that happen here within the sports science domain, and a lot of this has become portable, which is a blessing, but there's some problems disguised in this, and that the more portable, the more miniature sensors become, we actually introduce some new challenges that we actually need to be aware of. Some of those challenges we talk about in this paper. Alina Swafford, a postdoc, and myself put this paper together with some other colleagues, where we talked about applying wearable technology to understanding circus movements. And we categorized some of the issues that you have to be aware of when you're trying to select a device, durability and battery life, ultimately down to how we process data and what type of information we want to get from a device. And so it's really an exciting phase of sports science, but it's also a very challenging phase because a lot of instruments are becoming available and they're low cost, but the quality of information you get back from those devices may not be helpful ultimately to help an athlete. And so the science approach in this class and the way that our department approaches sports science is very research focused. And research projects can range everything from just a descriptive project, just describing movements, flexions, extensions, rotations, phases, discrete events, what have you, or it could be some type of intervention, some type of recovery intervention, or some type of training program, or nutrition or supplement program, whatever it is. It can be some type of intervention, design an experiment around that. It could be predictive. We'll talk about this in terms of doing combine testing to try to predict or identify talent, as well as to use those data for injury prevention or to identify return to play criteria for athletes. And sports science can also be very survey related in terms of surveying athletes in terms of injury, maybe training history, or going back to the sport business side, it could be some sport economy type of question, fan engagement in question in terms of the experience of watching sports. And so I just put this model over here. This is from my dissertation, where I was trying to create an understanding of all the data I collected, and I created this crazy flow chart, which was helpful to me, but at the same time, difficult to actually discern anything from quickly. But it was a way to try to identify how different people were responding. And this is the thing about research. Research is not easy. If anyone presents, oh yeah, let's just do an easy research project, there really is no such thing as an easy research project. You really need to have a good understanding of scientific approach, and have an understanding of the tools that you use to collect data, how to analyze the data that you collect, ultimately interpreting the data via statistics, and understanding of the literature to try to put the results in some context. So it's a tough process, but it's a lot of fun at the same time. So what's the success if we have all these sports scientists out there and we're trying to build sports science curriculum? What is success? Well, really, success can be partly a very sort of nebulous success in that we're really looking to help stimulate collaborations amongst different disciplines, sport industry, faculty, students, and other community members. And by collaborating with a lot of different blindfolded scientists who are going in a room trying to figure out what object that's in front of them, we believe we'll be able to better understand human performance. And again, human performance from high-level elite athlete to those who are just trying to complete a 5K, couch to 5K, couch to half marathon, whatever it is. And ultimately, we want to have sports research, education, and innovation that all lead to applying sports science knowledge to help right now, that one lens, and then generating new sport-related knowledge that may not come out until we study something over multiple years, sometimes decades, to really understand mechanisms or best training approaches, what have you. And we're looking to help everybody. The professional athlete, the collegiate athlete, the youth athlete, the age grouper, the person just going to the gym to work out, that they have the right equipment and that they're doing things that will minimize the risk of injury and maximize their ability to achieve their goals. And so this is sort of a fun sort of catchphrase: optimize health, maximize performance. That's what we want. We want to optimize health, whatever health is, physical, mental, what have you. And we want to maximize performance, whatever performance is. It's how well you do something. And